Hello guys and welcome to the FPL Duo. We are here for the FPL podcast for Gameweek 13. Obviously before we get into this video guys, make sure you give this video a like, leave a comment down below and subscribe for more. As you can see, obviously Huss isn't with us currently, but bear with, he will be joining in this stream later on. He's not available at the moment, but he will be joining the stream later on, so don't worry guys, he will be in the stream. Obviously let's get into it. So the key points and discussions that obviously we're going to discuss about obviously for Game Week 13 surrounding topics are going to be the clean sheet probabilities for each individual team, some XG stats that may provide some more insight on particular players and the teams, differential players to watch out for upcoming with the fixture swings and players returning from injury, team and captain selections as well, also going to be discussed later on, and obviously the fixtures that you think you should target as well. So obviously with all that in mind guys, let's start off with obviously the clean sheet probabilities for each team in the Premier League so far. So at the top, obviously you got Arsenal up there who have West Ham away, and they have kept 5 clean sheets so far this season, coming off of a clean sheet from last game in Game Week 12 against Nottingham Forest. So yeah, it feels like now is the time where you could invest in some defensive options for Arsenal. Now it seems like they have a good, nice run of fixtures, and that West Ham away fixture has given us 42% chance of a clean sheet, which is the highest probability according to this stat for Game Week 13. And it is obviously not a surprise because Arsenal fixtures have swung, becoming more easy, approachable, and as I mentioned, you could look towards a defensive option to obviously go for your Arsenal defense. Raya, if you think goalkeeper is good. Gabriel, if you like that attacking threat from a defender, premium one. Or even Timber, who's slightly cheaper than Gabriel, but due to Ben White being out injured, could be a nice option to go for in that Arsenal defense. But again, even the attack as well, if you're looking at Saka to bring back in your team, Havertz, or any other midfield for Arsenal who you think looks good for that West Ham away fixture onwards long term. And obviously down below, you've got Brighton obviously on 3 clean sheets, 38% chance of a clean sheet against Southampton at home. That's potentially the most outstanding fixture of this game week because we know Southampton have the worst record this season for conceding goals, and they haven't kept a clean sheet yet themselves so far this season, as they are literally at the bottom of the table with a 10% chance of keeping one against Brighton away. So yeah, again, Brighton, I guess it's another one where you can look at obviously attacking options. You've got João Pedro there, who's popular this week to bring in, but also if you look at the defense, there's Van Heck, or if you look at 1 week punt on Estupinian, he's also a good option too for that fixture. So moving down those, obviously you've got Nottingham Forest, who have looked good this season, same percentage as Brighton, 38% chance against Ipswich at home. Again, nice fixtures down this grid. It seems like there's a lot of high probabilities for clean sheets. It looks like on the left-hand side of this table, and obviously followed by Brentford, Man United. Obviously, Man United are level with Arsenal in terms of clean sheets, 5 apiece, which doesn't seem like they should be on 5 clean sheets, Man United, but they are. They have a 35% chance of a clean sheet against Everton at home, which Everton have failed to score in the last 3 game weeks as well. So bear that in mind. Everton have lost their shooting capability in the last 3 game weeks, and they have yet to score a goal. So maybe that is good for those Man United owners who have defenders in their team like Mazraoui or Delo. Obviously down below you got Tottenham, Bournemouth, and then it gets to the point where the probability really dips. So obviously Chelsea, Newcastle, Liverpool, the probability of their clean sheet is very low. And then obviously move on to the right-hand side where we see Crystal Palace, Wolves, Man City. Not a surprise that they're on the right-hand side of this because they've only kept 2 clean sheets this season. They've been defensively a mess, and they do have the toughest fixture arguably against Liverpool away. So who knows what the result will be, but it looks like it will be in favour of Liverpool, especially when it's a home fixture at Anfield. And obviously, you've got Ipswich, Everton, West Ham, Aston Villa, Leicester, Fulham, and obviously Southampton seem to always be at the bottom of the clean sheet probability with 10% against Brighton. So it is a little, obviously, clear indicator, guys, if you're looking at defensive options, that who you may want to target in terms of fixtures this week for Gameweek 13. So moving on, obviously, we talked about the probability clean sheets for each team. Let's move on to the player transfers and what it's looking like for obviously managers, who they're looking to bring in and who we've looked to take out of our teams. I think it's not a surprise on obviously the taking out part where a lot of players are focused their priorities. But let's look at the transfers for players in. Obviously at the top we have Cunha on 658,000 transfers, so he's the popular pick for this week. It's no surprise. Obviously, Cunha is on fire currently. Obviously, scoring back-to-back returns, getting 2 goals and 1 assist against Fulham, 60-pointer. Before that, against Southampton, getting the goal and assist from that game with a 12-pointer. So he's had a double haul back-to-back, and he has a good fixture against Bournemouth. So it's not a surprise that Cunha's up there with the most transferred player in. Just below him, obviously, there's João Pedro on 448,000. Again, another player that we've all wanted in our teams. Sooner rather than later, I think, for this, because you don't want to miss the boat on, obviously, João Pedro's points. Since his return from injury, he has consistently returned again. Obviously, a goal and assist from the Bournemouth game, and before that, Man City, even where Brighton won. Again, he only played 25 minutes in that game, but still managed to get a goal and assist, and that was his first game returning from his injury. So again, he's another player that makes a game changer for Brighton. Must have, I think, especially with the fixture against Southampton in Game Week 13 as well. It is another great pick to consider. Obviously, in third place, you've got Saka on 416,000 transfers in. So a lot of people are looking to bring, obviously, back Saka into your teams now that Arsenal's fixtures have become, like I said, more approachable now, and we've seen the talent that Saka does provide for Arsenal. And I think it does help as well that Odegaard, again, has returned from injury, and obviously Arsenal altogether look as mighty strong with Odegaard back into that squad. And they do have West Ham next, so it isn't a bad fixture to bring, obviously, Saka in after his goal and assist against Nottingham Forest. Obviously, if we look further down the list, we've got Salah in 4th place. I think that's just down to a lot of managers not having him at this moment in time, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, he has had a lot of transfers in. Pedro Porro is no surprise there with a massive clean sheet and win against Man City. Unexpected, but you can't forget Pedro Porro's attacking threat he does provide. And he showed that a lot in that Man City game. Just below him is Nicholas Jackson, who I'm keeping an eye on myself. I'm not surprised at how many transfers in he's had, considering his fixture is Aston Villa next. I think it's still a good fixture to bring, obviously, him in. Followed by Maddison in 7th. I think maybe a bit knee-jerky. Obviously, he did get a nice return in that Man City game on his birthday. But again, I'm not sure about Maddison's minutes and whatnot, but a lot of people have faith and have brought him in. Gabriel is currently obviously yellow flagged for a knock, but he should be fine. A lot of people have considered Gabriel, like I mentioned earlier. It could be good in terms of the fixture Arsenal do have next and long term. Bring Gabriel back into your team might not be such a bad idea for those clean sheets that Arsenal will get. 8 Noreen Palmer at the bottom. Again, not surprised at that. Obviously, Wolves haven't kept many clean sheets. Aït-Nouri's been a bit quiet in recent game weeks. And similar to Palmer, he's had a lot of opportunities to score, but they haven't really come, obviously, finished. I think from last game week, he was a bit unfortunate. Palmer's shot was blocked by Madueke, his teammate. So that could have been a different story. Obviously, he did blank, though, last game week. But a few of you have brought Palmer in this week. So let's move on, obviously, to the transfer outs. I'm not really going to mention much because it seems like Haaland is the most transferred out player by far. 600,000 currently have transferred out Haaland, which isn't a surprise after how the last game went against Spurs. And yeah, Haaland's become a very frustrating figure in fantasy football, especially in the last 6 game weeks. If you have owned him, it has been a disaster. And obviously, for those who've taken him out very early on, it's worked out really well. But yeah, a lot of people have to consider obviously taking Haaland out, and for the foreseeable, not really a captain option anymore, especially when he's got Liverpool next as his next fixture. It doesn't look great to keep him from this moment on until Man City sort of regain a bit of form, and we see a lot more consistency from Haaland in terms of goals. But for now, he is the most transferred out player. Obviously followed by Luis Diaz, Guardiola, Raul Jimenez, Semenyo. He's suspended, so for 1 game week he got his 5 yellow cards, so he's a bit, obviously he misses out for this fixture against Wolves. Trent in 6th place, Smith Rowe, Welbeck, Chris Wood, surprisingly. Wasn't expecting to see him, even though he's 9th on the table in terms of transfer outs. I think that Ipswich at home fixture is a good one for him before you can consider taking him out. And last but not least, obviously Palmer was on both the transfers in and transfer out. So split minds, I think, for Cole Palmer this week against Aston Villa. So that's a bit of obviously player transfers, guys. If you're keen to look at who is the popular and who's not. So let's obviously move on to the players to watch. So these are the differentials and long-term picks that you might want to consider due to the fixtures and the players' form at the moment and maybe in the future. So obviously the first one is Matoma, who I think he's been a bit underwhelming for Brighton, but I think he's been a bit unlucky at the same time. And his XG stats are very lower than they should be. They should be much higher. The fact that he's had big chances, he's missed 5 of them, just tells you that obviously he should have more than 2 goals and 2 assists for Brighton. But yeah, he's a player, especially for the Southampton at home fixture, which you could consider if you wanted to go different, break the template a bit, because a lot of people are going to obviously go towards João Pedro in forward. But as an midfield option, if you're looking for that 5th midfielder where he could give you that extra push this week, because Tomo is only 60% owned and he's only had 83,000 transfers in, and he's pretty nailed. He's only come off the bench once out of his 12 appearances. He's taken 15 shots, 10 shots have been on target, 4 off, so he's been quite clinical in terms of his approach towards shooting towards the goal. And yeah, in terms of goal involvement, like I said, 4 in total, which I believe that's very low for Matoma. I've seen him last season be for more accelerate, but there has been a few changes to that Brighton team. But yeah, for the fixtures, it's hard to ignore them in the next 5. I think they're all great ones where Matoma could possibly equalise on his goal involvements, whether it be assists or goals, and especially that Southampton at home one where Brighton are obviously going to push really high up. That does provide more opportunities for Matoma to get more involved in the action as well. And yeah, obviously his XG is very low at the moment, but I feel like it will grow in the next 5 game weeks. And that 6.4 million cheap midfielder option that you might want to consider long term is a player to watch out for in the next coming game weeks. So the next player that you could possibly look to watch as well is Nicholas Jackson. Imagine a lot of people are waiting to see what he does in the Aston Villa home fixture, which arguably I don't say that's not a bad one. I mean, I feel like it's going to be a high scoring one between both teams in terms of scoring. But I think a lot of people are going to consider him for the Southampton fixture in Gameweek 14 for obviously Nicholas Jackson to get involved in the action. But he has had a lot of transfers in this week. 225,000 of you have brought him in. I've also been looking at Nicholas Jackson myself as an option up front. He's had 7 goals so far with 3 assists, equaling 10 goal involvements. He's had, again, 5 big chances he's missed. He's taken 10 shots, 8 being on target and 2 off. So, again, another player that shows clinical finishing when it comes to that goal opportunity for Chelsea. A bit more expensive, though, 8 million. But I think it is worth the value for money for Nicholas Jackson. It would be different from obviously last season where he wasn't confident. He had a lot of chances missed, but he seems to have grown in that position for Chelsea, and they're looking much better this season, Chelsea overall. Not much of a differential, obviously at 19% ownership, but he's still a player that you might want to consider bringing it if you want to maybe gain some more rank from a non-popular option like a João Pedro or Cunha for Gameweek 13 onwards. And also moving on to the last player to watch. This one's a bit far-fetched, but I believe it's still a good option nonetheless for obviously Arsenal and the way their fixtures do turn out in the next 5. So Odegaard is the third player to watch out for. Now, obviously, he's only played 2 game weeks since he was injured. But like I said, ever since he's come back from injury, Arsenal have looked 10 times as better in terms of structure in defence, midfield, and the attack is very clinical. Now, he's had 2 assists so far, 1 from each game week on his return. So he has yet to blank. And I feel like he's a player that if you are stretched for money, which is very hard if you have sold Haaland already, but if you have limited money, you can't reach for Saka, then Odegaard is potentially second or third best the option to go for in your team at 4% ownership as well. He could provide you with some returns here and there, not consistently, because as we've seen this season, he hasn't been a consistent returner like Saka or Havertz, but again, he is not such a bad third pick in that attack. If you're looking for obviously a double attack to go with Odegaard or Saka or Odegaard and Havertz, I think he's still a good option. But yeah, so far, without his injury, his stats obviously look a bit more different in terms of goal involvement, how many shots he's taken, and the amount of chances he's missed. I feel like obviously that's again underwhelming due to the injury, but since coming back from injury, he has been quite good. So obviously, as players to watch, guys, and differentials to look out for. Let's move on to obviously the XG. So this is for the expected results are based on the XG of each match. So this is the expected points and versus the actual points that every individual team is on currently. So obviously, if you look at Tottenham at the top there, obviously they're on 31 expected points, but their actual points are 19. So they're obviously expecting that versus their actual is minus 12. So their points should be higher than what they are currently, which again that does make sense because Spurs haven't consistently kept a good run of form. They've one loss, bit of mix and match in terms of their consistency of form, which again makes sense. Same for Man City, we've seen on a massive winless run at the moment. Their actual points is 23. They're expected to have 31, but again, they're underperforming at -8. So there's times where they should have won this point, should have won that game, but unfortunately haven't. And again, another team that's obviously expected to score more points. Obviously, Liverpool in third. Their expected points is 27, so they're actually above their actual expected points with 31, which again, Liverpool on a good run of form. They've only lost to Nottingham Forest too, so this season, which isn't a surprise, but at the moment it's looking good for Liverpool. Followed by Manchester United, which is a surprise because their actual points are 16, but they're expected to have 20, so they're just below their expected points, which you take what you can from that statistic and the expected points. Obviously, further down, you got Chelsea, Nottingham Forest, Crystal Palace, Fulham, Everton, and Arsenal being 10th. Now, Arsenal again, their expected points are 17, but actually they're on 22, so they're above as well, which is good. Out of those teams, there's only 3 of them being above the actual ones, and that is obviously Liverpool, Chelsea, and Arsenal. The rest are either neutral or below their expected points. And obviously for the rest of the table, down below you've got Newcastle, Brighton, Aston Villa, Bournemouth, West Ham, Leicester, Southampton, Ipswich, Brentford, and finishing off with Wolves. And as you can see, they're all above what they should be expecting in terms of points, apart from Southampton, who are struggling at the bottom of the table, which isn't a surprise that they're on -3 in terms of the points expected. So that just gives you an insight, obviously, guys, to expected results based on the XG of each match. Now, obviously, this is teams XG versus actual goals scored against the expected goal scores. So this hasn't changed much since we last looked at it, but it's good to have a little recap on obviously the teams and whether their expected goals versus the actual is above or below negative or positive. So up top you've got Man City, who again their expected is below the actual amount. It's 0.35, so their expected goals is obviously deteriorated. So they're not scoring as many as they should be, as an example. Below them, they've got Tottenham, who's scoring above what they should be at 0.39. So their expected goals to score are doing well. Same for Liverpool. Again, another team that's doing well in terms of that 0.31 expected goals scored. Fulham underscoring. Arsenal over the actual amount scoring. Bournemouth under. Chelsea again overscored at 42. Very high, but no surprise they have scored a few in each particular match. Then you got Nottingham Forest, Man United, and Crystal Palace have 0.62, so they're scoring not as many as expected so far this season. Now, if you look at the second page, obviously you got Brighton, West Ham, Everton, Newcastle, Brentford, Aston Villa, Wolves, Leicester, Southampton, and Ipswich. And if we're looking at any interesting particular ones, there's obviously Everton, who, like I mentioned, they're finding it hard to score goals. Haven't scored one in the last 3 game weeks, so it's not a surprise that their expected goals score is really low at 0.54 when it should be much higher than that. In terms of other interesting ones, obviously Brentford are scoring many more goals than they should be expected, so at 0.51. So again, it's another team that's overperforming where they should be. And yeah, again, guys, that's a little bit more insight to teams' actual goals scored against, expected goals scored. And obviously moving on to game week 13 to 18 win percentage. So this is the expected total wins and their chances of winning percentage that you see on the screen right now. So at the top, in terms of game week 13, which is the first column, you see Brighton have a 66% chance of winning, as an example. And then obviously it continues from 14, 15, 16, where the percentages do change. But for this current game week, Brighton have the highest win percentage chance, obviously, against Southampton, followed by Arsenal in second at 61, and Brentford and Spurs. And obviously, they all have relatively high chances of winning from the top 10 that you see on the screen. But obviously, Brighton, Arsenal, and Brentford are the main ones that you'll see win because of their high percentage against the opponents that they face in Game Week 13. But again, it's just a little insight, guys, to see obviously how many, what percentage you think teams will win in terms of the loss against the opponent percentage. And obviously, on the end of the column is the total amount of wins expected from the next 5. So Arsenal are expected to win 4 of the 5. Brighton are expected to win almost 3 of theirs. And obviously, with the lowest one is not the Forest, surprisingly. We're expected to win 2 at the most out of those 5. So it just shows you the swing as well for fixtures in terms of how many wins each opponent is predicted to obviously win from Game Week 13 to 18. And if we look obviously at the teams below with much lower percentages, it's obviously interesting to see Man City, but at the same time not, because they have a 33% chance of winning against Liverpool at Anfield, which is more likely to happen. I imagine that should be much lower considering Man City's form at the moment, but they are expected to win for at least 4 of their games next in the running from Game Week 13 to 18. Obviously, Aston Villa on a winless run at the moment, so they need to start obviously getting back on the winning streak again. But their highest win percentage comes in Game Week 15 with 70% chance, which is their highest in the next 5. But in terms of that, it's a mixed bag. Obviously, in total wins, there's not many teams there that have a high win percentage in the next 5 game weeks. So hopefully, obviously, that helps you guys, obviously, and gives you a bit more options and directions you might go in terms of that stat. And obviously, moving on to Game Week 13 goal probabilities. So this is the prediction chance for both teams to score and the total goals predicted over in each game. So starting off, obviously, with Brentford and Liverpool. Obviously, they have total goals expected is 3.11. So there was at least 3 goals predicted to be in that game against Brentford and Leicester. In terms of both teams score, 57% chance. So it's more than half a chance that both of those teams will score against each other. In terms of over goals, the highest one is, well, obviously, there is 96% for at least 1 goal or more in that Brentford and Leicester fixture. As well, second best, over 1.5, expected to score 2 goals. So, yeah, it is expected, obviously, to be a high-scoring game between Brentford and Leicester in that fixture, and most likely not a clean sheet, given to those stats on the screen. Obviously, below them, you've got Brighton and Southampton, which isn't a surprise that their total goals expected is 3 again, at least 3 goals. And obviously, the percentage for over at least 1 is high, because I expect that to be a very high-scoring game. It was a surprise to see Southampton score 2 against Liverpool in that 3-2 win. And again, I won't be surprised if Southampton give it all they got against Brighton, but it will be a tough game for them. But I do expect Brighton to get the win from that game, and for there to be at least 2 goals in that fixture. But both teams to score is interesting. I wouldn't write Southampton off because they do have the potential to score against challenging opponents. Moving on, you've got Chelsea and Aston Villa. Again, in terms of these top 5 fixtures, they have the highest total goal rate at 3.45. So that match again is also looking like to be one of those where both teams will most likely score against each other, because both teams do play a relatively high line against each other, so that makes it more chance of obviously attack on the break. Terms of overs is very high in terms of over 0.5, 1.5 for that team. For that fixture, 97% and 86% for Chelsea and Aston Villa in that fixture. So they're most likely both look like go to score in that game, judging from the stats. Let's look at the interesting one, Liverpool Man City, because I can't call how. Well, obviously, I expect Liverpool to get the win from this game, especially the way Man City's condition is at the moment. They are looking terrible. But yeah, the result will be very well. It will go in Liverpool's favour. It just depends on how many they expected to score. But it looks like at least 3 again from that game. You do expect Man City to score at least 1, but I think Liverpool will run away with it in the end at Anfield. Very hard place to face any team. So I do expect Liverpool to put in a good performance against Man City, regardless. But yeah, as a few obviously teams that show the total goals and both teams to score stats and the amount of over goals in those fixtures. And these are the other 5 fixtures on the screen that are shown as well. Now, obviously, in particular, Spurs and Fulham stand out again with their high total goal statistic. Again, 3.41. At least 3 goals predicted in that game, with a 60% chance of both teams scoring. Possible, obviously, Spurs' defence hasn't been the greatest, even though they kept a clean sheet against a struggling Man City. But let's take into consideration for the rest of the season that Spurs haven't been the best in defence and have made lots of errors, mistakes, and have left the back line very vulnerable to opposing teams, especially on the attack. And Fulham are a team where they'll take any chance if it's given to them against any team. But in terms of other matches, Man United Everton one is interesting because I don't expect there to be almost at least 3 goals in that game. I feel like it's going to be a very low scoring one because Everton have struggled to score goals, and Man United aren't in the best shape yet on the Amorim either. So it might take a few more games before we start seeing more consistency from Man United players. But it will be interesting to see what the result is of that game will be. I imagine it will go in Man United's favour, but I don't expect many goals from that fixture. Maybe at least 1 or perhaps 2, but I wouldn't say 3 or more. So obviously, hopefully that helps again, guys, for goal probabilities and the prediction chance for both teams to score and the total goals predicted. Hopefully that gives you more insight as well into that stat. So obviously, let's move on to, well, that's the first segment of this podcast spoken about in terms of XG stats, clean sheet probabilities, and all that good stuff. We move on to the next segment of this podcast, which is obviously team selections. But before we get into it, we'll just recap on obviously how the game week went in terms of game week 12 and how well our teams went. It's just a little recap, guys, on how many points we did get, because there has been a lot of changes to bonus points since the knee-jerk reaction. So first I'll do my team first, just in case obviously Huss does make an appearance at this moment. So this is my team on the screen. I'll just read through quickly how well it did in game week 12. So you got Herbertson in goal with 2 points. Obviously not expected against the fixture against Leicester. Against Chelsea. In terms of the back 3, there's only 1 return, and that was from Van der Berg with his clean sheet against Everton in that 0-0. Masrari conceded, along with Ait Nouri in their fixtures, only giving me 2 points apiece from them 2. Moving on to the midfield 5. So again, it looked very quiet. Palmer wasn't able to score, but his shot was blocked by Madueke, and it could have been a potential goal. Burma, on the other hand, as well, quiet game for him. Brentford were down to 10 men, which didn't help any of the situation. So he's on another blank so far with only a clean sheet point. Brendan Johnson saves the game week a little bit, obviously, from his goal coming on for almost half an hour and scoring in that 4-0 win over Man City. Obviously, there's a little update to Salah's points because he had the bonus 3 originally and it was removed and he was reverted to a bonus 2. So he's in fact now on 26 points instead of his original 28 that he had prior to the obviously knee-jerk reaction stream. But he was the captain pick and he was the best option to go for in terms of my starting 11. So I'm happy that I got the right pick for this game week. Garnacho, again, that was a very appalling piece of form for Man United against Ipswich in that 1-1 draw. And again, not really much involvement from Garnacho in that match, even though he played 85 minutes. And just quickly up front, obviously you got Harner with his blank again. Obviously, Man City didn't score a goal against Spurs. And Chris Wood was benched as well. So he only played about half an hour, but Nottingham Forest didn't end up scoring in that 3-0 loss to Arsenal. In terms of the bench, there's no points whatsoever on there. Everyone scored 0. So I won't go too much into, obviously, the team bench. But it is a green arrow. I think I have to thank Salah for that green arrow because I wouldn't have got one otherwise. It would definitely have been a red. But that has helped me out this game week with a total of 54 game week points. And yeah, nice green arrow as well. Originally, my rank was, and I can check it now because I wasn't able to before. I'll quickly just re-update you guys. So my old rank was 3.7 million. It is now, I'm going to say 3.5. So it's not much of a big green arrow, but I'll take anything to slowly climb up the ranks. So it is a 200k green arrow for obviously game week 12. Now, obviously, before we get into the team selections and whatnot, I'll just quickly recap Huss's team to see how well he did for this game week. So, starting in goal, he did have Rare, which did pay off. Along with the double Arsenal defence, he went with Gabriel too, because they both scored 6 points apiece in their clean sheet against Nottingham Forest. Obviously, Aït-Nouri and Lewis both didn't return as they both conceded goals to their opposing teams. Moving on to Huss's midfield, quite quiet if I'm honest. The only returner was Salah. In Burma, we spoke about blank, only getting clean sheet points. Semenyo obviously got the yellow card and he's now suspended 1 point. Rogers, again, blanked, even after Villa scored 2 against Crystal Palace. And Palmer, who was unfortunate not to score in the fixture against Leicester. Obviously, he got the captaincy right as well, going with Salah too, which is, again, it's saved our game weeks, I think, from us. From obviously being frustrating. It turned out to be really well. Just moving on to his forward 2 players, that is Haaland on 2 points, and Strand Larson, who did manage to clinch an assist, even though Wolves won 4-1. He did manage to get us one attack return. Slightly underwhelming. They probably expected more from that fixture, but he is 2.9% owned, so a return is good nonetheless at that ownership. In terms of the bench, there is a few points on the bench. Obviously, Fabianski keeping a clean sheet, a shocking clean sheet against Newcastle. I never expected West Ham to not only win, but not concede either. So, yeah, it didn't really matter anyway because Ray did keep a clean sheet regardless. But interesting if you did play Fabianski in your teams. Obviously, you got Mikalenko, who managed to clinch one as well in that 0-0 against Brentford, which was pretty much guaranteed when Brentford went down to 10 men and they become more defensive. It looked like it was going to be a clean sheet indefinitely for Mikalenko, unfortunately, he was kept on the bench. Archer on one point, he did come on, but only for about 30 minutes. And obviously, Greaves is still out injured, who didn't play any minutes against Man United. So obviously, that's both our teams and how well we did in terms of game week 12. Hopefully, that's helped in terms of recap if you did miss out on the knee-jerk reaction. So let's move on to the team selection. So, oh, sorry, that's the wrong slide. There we go. So we move on to the interesting part of this, obviously streaming, that is the team selection for game week 13. So let's start off with Huss's team and what he's lined up in defense and obviously goalkeeper choice. So at the moment, he's gone with Raya in goal, who's got West Ham away, followed by Gabriel doubling up on Arsenal defense again. It was obviously the same fixture. Gabriel is there a flag, but he should be fine from a knock from yesterday's game in the UCL. But yeah, he should be fine for the West Ham game. He's got Mikalenko, he's got Man United away. Interesting fixture to play him. Aït-Nouri's got Bournemouth at home. Moving on to the midfield four. So he's got Salah as captain against Man City at home. Vice is on Mbeumo, he's got Leicester. Semenyo is suspended until the following game week after this one. And Wolves away as his fixture, but he won't be featuring for that game. And finally, Palmer, who's got Aston Villa at home, which is a nice fixture for him to bounce back in terms of returns. Obviously, moving on to his front three and bench order. So he's got Haaland, he's got Liverpool away, Strand Larsen's got Bournemouth at home, and Archer, who's got Brighton away. So it is a 3-4-3 formation. In terms of the bench, he's got Fabianski, he's got Arsenal at home, Rodgers, Chelsea away, Lewis has got Liverpool away, and Greaves with not the Forest away if he does start, as he's still currently flagged. So in terms of how much money, he's got obviously 0.4 in the bank with 2 free transfers, which is a luxury, I think, for game week 13, especially if you've still got Haaland in your team, because he is obviously on the chopping block, as we did mention. A lot of you have transferred him out, at least 600,000 of you, so you can only suspect, obviously, what Huss is going to plan to do with Haaland. But I was able to see what transfer plans he's had in mind, so it looks like he is going to take a -4, and the players he has decided to take out is Haaland, Semenyo, and Archer, which makes sense. Obviously, Archer is a cheap forward who isn't nailed and doesn't get returns. Obviously, Southampton have struggled for goals and wins. Semenyo is obviously suspended for Wolves away fixture for at least one game each, so again, he's a player out for this week. Haaland underperformed by far in the few games, so yeah, there's no point giving Haaland another chance, especially against Liverpool away, which will be a tough fixture for him. So these transfers are very justified for Huss's team. So let's see who he's decided to bring in for these 3 players. So the first one is Saka, who's got West Ham away. Again, good fixture, I think, to bring Saka in full after his goal and assist against Nottingham Forest. And yeah, it is time to start bringing the attack and defensive options for Arsenal. And I believe that is triple Arsenal. He's gone with double defense with 1 attacker in the team. So moving on to the transfers in terms of the forwards, no surprise, it is Cunha. He's got Bournemouth at home on a great run of form with 2 returns back-to-back game weeks in terms of double hauls. And next to him, alongside him, is João Pedro, who's got the outstanding fixture with Southampton at home, which could potentially be a nice captaincy option if you're looking to go different in your own teams. But yeah, they're 3 great transfers in. And it does make a huge difference in terms of the money you have, the luxury of having 3.9 million when you don't have Haaland in your team to spread the funds around even more. With obviously Huss's team. And there's a -4 this week, which I think it's a good -4 to take for the players he's bringing in. It would definitely, or it should make up for it easily And Salah captain, there's no really arguably a debate with this. We've seen how bad Man City have been in the last few game weeks. They haven't been on top form, and it seems like it's consistently happening every week. Whereas Liverpool, the polar opposite, they're top of the table. They've only lost one game. They've kept the most clean sheets this season compared to other teams. And Salah has been on great form like he has been through most of the previous seasons. So Captain Salah, it looks like it's going to be set on, obviously it looks like it's going to be set on Salah for Gameweek 13. So obviously that is Huss's team and what it looks like for Gameweek 13 lined up. And I'll see a few of the comments in the chat, so I'm going to take a few of them. So we've got Harry says, good evening, Jordan. Good evening, Harry. Hope you're doing well. You got Scouser, -8 to bring Cunha. I mean, it is a big hit to bring Cunha in, but I think it will be worth it long term with all his fixtures. So I wouldn't back against it. I think I would take the -8 to bring him in, because he is a great player for Wolves and the only main goal scorer I would think to go for in terms of the options there. So yeah, I think a -8 is worth it for Cunha, especially if you decide to captain him as well for the Bournemouth home fixture. Michael says, thoughts on Estupinian for a week punt before wildcard? Yeah, I believe Dan the Man mentioned Estupinian last a few streams ago with as in terms of 5 million defender. I think Estupinian for 1 week punt isn't such a bad idea, especially if you're obviously thinking of wildcarding too. Could be an option to go for when obviously they've got Southampton at home, so anything could potentially happen from that fixture. But yeah, I do like it as a differential pick as well. He's not very looked at, Estupinian, but he does have that attacking threat also. And Harry says Toma captain this week. Interesting, obviously captain pick, because he was one of the players to watch out for, I think, in obviously earlier on in this podcast. So yeah, I don't disapprove of it. I think it is a good differential captain to go for, Harry. Hopefully it does work out for you for that fixture against Southampton. And we've got Alex says, good evening, Jordan. Good evening, Alex. Hope you're doing well. Michael says, surely in Burma captain this week. I think there is a few captain options to potentially go for, because you have in Burma who's got Leicester at home. Leicester just sacked their manager as well, so they are managerless for that fixture. That might work in Burma's favour in terms of the team and the morale. Cunha has Bournemouth at home again, another fixture where you could potentially look to captain. João Pedro, best fixture for the game week against Southampton at home. Even Salah, Man City, possibly the best captain option, believe it or not, against Man City, the toughest fixture. But we all know how Man City have played and how Liverpool are in contrast. And the way Salah's been playing at the moment, it's hard to back against him as that captain option. So obviously that's Huss's team mentioned. Transfer plans wise, let's move on to my team and how it looks for game week 13. So starting off in goal, I have Hermanson, who has Brentford away. Again, it's going to be a tough fixture. Their manager's been sacked, so I'm not expecting much from that game. Potential save points. Hopefully there's a few in there. Hopefully Brentford takes some long shots rather than close encounters, because Hermanson does struggle with those. But yeah, hopefully there's save points in there for him for this game week. In terms of defence, you've got Vandenberg, he's got Leicester home, so obviously he's playing against Hermanson. So I'm hoping for a clean sheet one way or the other from either side. But if it's from both, that would be even better. But I very doubt that game to end 0-0. You got Masraoui, he's got Everton at home. He's currently playing tonight in the Europa League. See how he gets on. I have to watch out for that. But yeah, nice fixture against Everton at home. It's hard to know what you're going to get from Man United, especially with Amber in the team. Now, it seemed all right with Van Nistelrooy was there, but from the Ipswich game, it just looked like the same as it was when Ten Hag was manager there. So give it a few weeks, see how it does. But Man United have kept 5 clean sheets this season, so I suppose you can't back against the stats for that in terms of a Man United defender keeping a clean sheet. And moving on to the final defender, that is Aït-Nouri, who has Bournemouth at home. So again, this could be a nice fixture where potential clean sheet is in there. Bournemouth seem to be struggling at the moment in terms of results. And Aït-Nouri hasn't kept many clean sheets, nor has he had much attacking threat recently. So yeah, there's one to consider as well for this week, whether Aït-Nouri down the line becomes an option to sell if he isn't really getting any clean sheets or attack returns. But moving on to the midfield 4, we've got Palmer, who's got Aston Villa at home. Spoke about Palmer. Same with Mbeumo, Leicester at home, good captain option. Brennan Johnson is the one I'm worried about because he is playing tonight also, but I feel like he will be benched again in his fixture against Fulham at home. So fingers crossed he isn't, but I am watching out to see how many minutes he does play tonight. But it is slightly a worry if he does decide to get benched again. And finally, moving on to complete the midfield 4 is Salah, who's got Man City at home. He's currently my captain pick for this week for 13, as it is a good time to captain against the Man City, who seem to be struggling where we haven't seen them struggle so much in as far as I can remember. So yeah, I don't back against the captain pick. Moving on to the rest of the team. So the front 3 is Haaland, Wood, and Wheatley currently. I explained why Wheatley is in the starting 11 in terms of the transfer plans. It does make sense that way. But Wood has an extra fixture against Ipswich at home. I believe this is the last game week I think I own Chris Wood for, because his fixtures do slightly change now and become more tougher for Nottingham Forest. So he could be a player I'm looking to take out down the future come Gameweek 14. But hopefully I do get something out of him from Ipswich at home. Maybe it might convince me to keep him or might not. He has to wait and see. Haaland's Liverpool away. You're going to know what I'm going to do with Haaland regardless. I've already made the transfer to take Haaland out. I just will. I'll surprise you guys on what player I've decided to take Haaland out for to bring in. And obviously, Wheatley's going over to the home. He's a non-playing forward for Man United, so I'm not going to go into detail with that. In terms of the bench, non-playing goalkeeper Vardy, Martinez, Leicester at home. Garnacho's on the bench, Everton at home. I won't be surprised if Garnacho is benched for, obviously, the Man United game against Everton at home. I don't think he was that great, if I'm honest, in the fixture against Ipswich. Pretty quiet and disconnected by a lot of... I mean, you could really say that about every player in that Man United game. Farge's got Brentford away and Keane's got Man United away on the bench. So I have 2 free transfers, same formation, 3-4-3. I've got no money in the bank, which leaves me in a difficult position to obviously upgrade players. So the only option I can do is downgrade. So this is my transfer plan. So I am taking out 2 players, one of them being Haaland, the other one being Wheatley. So those 2 forwards are coming out of my team. And the players I'm looking to replace, well, I've already done the moves early on just to obviously give you guys the heads up. I've already transferred in Nicholas Jackson and João Pedro. They're both into my teams. The reason being why I've done the early transfers is obviously because Nicholas Jackson rose in price, I think yesterday or the day before. I brought him in for 7.9 million. He's now 8 mil. João Pedro is expected to rise tonight, but if not tonight, it will be tomorrow. So I wanted to bring him into my team as well before he rose in value as well. Now, as you can see, guys, I'm split in terms of captaincy between Salah and João Pedro. As you can see, it's now switched to João Pedro. So come the deadline stream, I might be in 2 frames of mind in the last hour whether I pick Salah or João Pedro for that fixture. it will come down to the wire, I think, of what or who I go for in between those two players. But yeah, I'm looking. There are so many captain options I could pick now for my team. Is since Harden's been taken out of the team, and it's so much better. A lot more money in the bank as well, 6.5 million, which is a great luxury to have. Especially the way the team is looking like. I'm more happy with it in terms of the forward line. And obviously the formation has changed. The 3-5-2 has become less popular now. It seems like a 4-3-3, a 3-4-3 has become more valuable in terms of how many forwards are doing well. So hopefully I'm not too late. I'm missing out on the forward on the form of the forwards that obviously scores and the goals that they're providing. But in the worst case, if Johnson is benched, maybe Kanacha comes on for him. But they are two players that I am wary of, rather how many minutes they will play and whether they start or not. So obviously, let me take a few more of your comments, guys, and we will soon obviously wrap up the stream. So we got a comment from Colm. He said, "Am I captain Salah just to give me some hope until the last game of the game week? I have chopped and changed between Pedro, Cunha, Salah, Palmer all week." Yeah, I feel like that's what I'm going to be like on obviously a deadline stream. I'm possibly going to keep switching my captaincies over because we're just spoiled for choice in terms of who to captain. There is a lot of options, I think, in our teams on who we choose, which I think is a good thing because we're not always focused on one particular player like we normally were with Haaland being the perma captain. And evening, Dan. Hopefully you're well. Kepa or Pickford and Kirkes or Mikalenko? Well, Bournemouth have Wolves. So to answer the second part of that question, I'd probably pick Mikalenko because I kind of see more of a chance of a clean sheet from Everton, as shocking as that sounds. If Man United come with a very disappointing performance like they did against Ipswich, wouldn't surprise me if that game ends in a draw or Everton score and win and keep a clean sheet. So I'd take a shot to Mikalenko in that game. To answer the first part, in terms of goalkeeper pick between Pickford and Kepa, because Chelsea have Aston Villa at home. I see Aston Villa scoring, so again, I'll probably play double Everton, but I mean, just in case, you might want to pick Kepa because I picked Mikalenko in that question. So yeah, I'll put Kepa and Mikalenko there. Captain Wood for the last dance, Alex. Yeah, could do. It did worry me, obviously, because Wood was benched, but I think that's purely down to the international break and obviously him playing for New Zealand, coming back. It could be a bit more lethargic from the journey returning, and it was an Arsenal game. It wasn't a game that not the Forest were expected to win, so maybe Woods wasn't really an option rather than rest, rather than playing minutes in that type of fixture. But yeah, here's one to consider, Alex. Maybe Captain Wood. It's good. It's going to come down to that live stream in terms of who I pick. Dan the Man says, I'm on Saka 100% captained all week. Yeah, I think a lot of people I think that's what I feared the most this game week is not having Saka in the team or not even having an Arsenal asset in my team. But I think soon I will bring Saka in myself just to cover the threat of his rising ownership. And if he does continue to run a form like he did getting a goal and assist against Nottingham Forest, then yeah, I don't want to be too late for that to jump on the Saka boat. But again, he's another good captain that you could target and not one that would disappoint. So either double Everton or double Bournemouth or one of each. So I'd probably say double Everton defense. I mean, I don't expect. Well, I wouldn't be surprised on to see if Everton did keep a clean sheet, but I expect Man United and Aston Villa to score against who they're facing, but I'll take a little punt on Everton to keep a clean sheet. So I'll go for Pickford and Mikalenko. So yeah, I'll go double Everton. It says 90% sure it was long travel from New Zealand using when he hit Arsenal on the break. Yeah, it does look like that, Alex. So I don't think Woods is a issue for the Ipswich. I'm pretty sure. I think that works in the favour. I think as well because of that rest and the long travel that he played. Obviously, not many minutes in the Arsenal game. It does make sense, and that's in that way. So yeah. I think, Chris would have been locked and ready. I think if you are looking to captain him for the last time, if you are looking to get rid of him after Ipswich fixture. But that is all, guys. I believe that we have. It's just come to 1 hour through this. Obviously, through this. I'm not sure words. Through this podcast. Well, thank you guys for watching. Obviously, it's always appreciated through the stream. Make sure you give this video a like, subscribe for more, and make sure you turn your notifications on for when we next stream, which will be tomorrow. Deadline stream is a Friday one, so it's a quick swing this week. So tomorrow at 5:30 UK time, we will be streaming for the deadline stream, so make sure you tune in for that also. But until then, guys, obviously, thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your evening. Take care, and Huss will be back for the obviously deadline stream tomorrow. So yeah, see you soon, guys, and enjoy the rest of your evening.